Very good evening to everyone out there, and good evening to you, Ben. How are you?
Good evening, ladies and gents. Yeah, good evening, Peter. I am good, thank you. Very good.
I
Yes,
am I am so looking forward to this.
that's awesome. I know it's a late one for us here in Europe, isn't it? But it's
It's,
a late shift.
it's way past my bedtime, man.
It's
It,
part of being an airline pilot, though.
yeah. But like now that I'm setting my own roster, I work a lot more, but on the hours that I kind of choose myself.
Yeah, I don't have that luxury.
No,
I have
no,
a
that's
roster.
true. That's true. So while we are waiting for any or everyone to join, I hope there's going to be a lot of people here. What have you been up to today? Have you been flying?
Yeah, no, today off. It's a day off today, so actually a bit of time at home. Got a little bit of leave actually now, so got some days off, which is nice. So going from real aircraft or real sim to home sim. No rest for the wicked.
Awesome.
Busman's holiday.
Right. So let's just jump straight into it, right?
Yeah.
The reason that we wanted to do this video or this live stream today was that I did a video a few weeks back about the load reduction device. It's a device that is present on Boeing 737 Maxes and Airbus A320 Neo aircraft, and also I believe some 777s and the 787. And I'm going to go into a little bit about what that is, but we got a lot of feedback. Right, there's a lot of questions about this, and how would you deal with it in case that would actually happen to you if the system would break down? And so we thought, well, I mean, the best way is to show people, right?
Absolutely.
And this is kind of what we do. I mean, you and I, we are doing this in an actual course, a virtual 737 course that we have created, where we are kind of explaining things like this, and you'll see up here somewhere there's a QR code if you're interested in checking it out, where we're going through like hours and hours, tens. I don't know how many hours of course material.
Yeah, it's over 10 hours. We've got 10, well, 12 modules in total that
Yeah,
take you from zero all the way through to learning how to fly the 737 and the Max
and the
as
max
really
now.
we do.
Exactly. And I mean, we thought since we've added the Max to the module, we might as well show you a little bit about, how our instruction works.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but before we get to that, I just want to, for those of you who maybe have missed my video about the load reduction device, the LRD, just to give you a little bit of an overview of what that is. All right. So the 737 Max and the Airbus A320 Neos, they have slightly larger engines on them than the older, the next generation, and the classic Airbus A320 family did. The reason for that, obviously, is that they are more efficient. The bigger bypass ratio you have, the bigger engines you have, the more efficient, more fuel efficient they become. But the problem with that also is that you get a larger and larger fan. And if something would happen to that fan, that might cause more vibrations, serious, severe vibrations. And in the case of the Max and the Neo family, those vibrations could be so severe, if you would lose a fan blade, for example, that it could actually damage the wing structure, the pylon, and the engine in itself. So the engineers that were building this engine, they thought, how do we solve this without having to add on loads and loads of material that makes the engine super heavy? And they thought out of a really smart system, which basically would allow the engine core, the drive shaft goes through the engine core, instead of that being fixed and vibrating crazy with a fan blade that's broken, it would allow that to move a little bit. So it turns out like little flower movement as it would be turning, and by doing that, it would reduce the vibrations a lot. Hence the load reduction device, LRD. Right. But what they didn't tell, well, what they didn't really put in our manuals, pilots' manuals, was that if that system would actually activate, so let's say you would have a bird strike, it would cause the system to activate. It would also open up the oil A sump, and it would dump loads and loads of engine oil into the hot part of the engine, into the core of the engine. And of course, that's where we take our bleed air for our air conditioning system. So we don't want any oil into the bleed air that we then breathe, right? And this was in itself, I mean, the engine shuts down, right? So it also, after a while, shuts down all of the PRSOV valves and stuff that allows this to come in. But the problem here was that specifically on the 737 MAX, there was a possibility of, before those valves would be closing down, that there would be enough oil entering into the system so that it would actually fill the cockpit with smoke.
Yep.
Very toxic smoke.
Yep.
So that's what, I mean, then there's been loads of discussions between what the FAA did and didn't do and so on, but that's the system, right? And in that video, I explained that if we would, for example, be taking off out of Salzburg, and which is a very complicated procedure that we're just about to show you. Well, if this would happen just in the moment of rotation, the pilots would have to basically take a very, very nasty choice. Like they would have to choose between putting the mask on or fly the aircraft, at least for the first couple of seconds. And we would say that that would be very complicated. And we're now about to show you why that is.
We are, and it's something that we're now training more. Pilots are becoming more aware of this. There's more training involved in it. It's something that I'm training at work. So the awareness and the training involved with this is definitely moving as knowledge is being built over this. But I think, as you mentioned, it's the fact that the cockpit fills up with smoke so quickly. I think that's what shocked the Southwest crew, wasn't it? How quickly that it comes into the cockpit. And how that affects us as humans, watering eyes, your lungs are burning, all the while you're trying to deal with this engine failure that's just happened. So this is the challenge that we've got, and this is what we're going to kind of show you. So we can't simulate smoke, but what we can do is kind of show you what we would be doing when we have an engine failure in Salzburg. We're going to brief it. We're going to take you through the real world procedures that we would use, and then you can kind of use your imagination to go, wow, this is busy. And imagine now smoke and everything else getting involved. It's a tough day at the office. It's a tough day.
It would be a very tough day in the office, and you see just how complex this is with no smoke. But it was a good point you pointed out that this has actually happened twice already. So two different crews, both for Southwest, interestingly, have had this system activating, and have had one in the case. I think it was done in Havana. The smoke came into the passenger cabin, and in the other, it came straight into the cockpit.
Yes.
So this is something that has already happened, which is why I wanted to highlight it to you guys, my colleagues.
Absolutely. And we've got an action-packed session tonight for you. So what do you reckon, Peter? Without further ado, shall we jump into the sim?
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Let's take our seats.
So it'll take just a few seconds here to load it up. It should be with us. There we are.
There we go. So welcome, ladies and gents, to the 737 MAX. Here we are at the holding point in Salzburg for runway 15. And we are going to sort of walk you through what we're going to do. And this is something that we would do. Like if Petra and I were flying together this evening out of Salzburg for runway 15, we're going to kind of go through a bit of a briefing that we would really do in real life.
And it's really needed here.
Yeah, it really is. And it's one of the things that when we train pilots to fly out of Salzburg, because it does need its own training, one of the real key kind of elements and takeaways that you want the pilots to walk away with is that when they line up on the runway, in your mind, you've got to be ready for this engine failure. And if it doesn't happen, great. But if it does, you're in that right frame of mind, really ready to action what we're about to go and do, because it gets busy very quickly.
I just can't get over how good looking this cockpit is. It is a really nice looking cockpit. I know the overhead panel is from the 60s, but it doesn't matter. I just want. I can almost feel the smell of it.
Yeah. The new ones we're getting have that new car smell as well.
Yeah, the old ones more like old feet. But
right. So what we'll do, so we've started the engines, obviously, and obviously the MAX engines, they have their own unique starting process, which we cover in the MAX conversion course, in the pro course that we do. So if you want to see more of that, that's all built into that. So we've started there, we've taxied out, we've done the before takeoff checks. We're now at the holding point, kind of ready to go. Kind of simulating that we don't really know what's about to actually go and unfold in front of us. But what we will do is we're going to brief it and we're going to prepare for it. Now, when we do a departure out of an airport, we fly something called a SID, a standard instrument departure. And that gives us a specific routing to fly and altitudes to hit so that we fly according to airspace and speed restrictions and so on, noise requirements. But what they don't really do is cater for an engine failure, because when we lose an engine, our climb performance is obviously massively reduced. So to cater for that, we have something called a special engine out SID, or maybe something you've heard as an emergency turn procedure, where if you went straight ahead, you're going to hit something. So we can't have that. So we have to have a special departure that we would fly if we lose an engine. And Salzburg is no exception. It has quite a complex one, and we're going to kind of go through that together now. And I'll talk you through. So we'll bring it up on screen, and you can kind of follow us through with this. So in the FMC, or in the computer here, you can see, if I just zoom in a little bit here, sorry, if I just press that button, you can see that this is the departure that we would fly with all engines working, everything doing its job. We're going to go and fly this, and we would have briefed this already, but we're not going to be flying that. So what we do need to do is get ready to fly the engine out, Sid. And you can see on the screen there that if we lose an engine, we're going to climb straight ahead to a distance of 1.4 miles from something called the Oscar Echo Sierra, which is the beacon that's on the runway for the instrument landing system. And that data is shown right here on top of our DME, on our primary flight display. So at the moment, we're 0.2 miles away. When it gets to 1.4 miles, we would make a right turn, about 15 degrees, onto a track of 168. And then we're going to carry on that track until we get to 1.9 miles. But the key thing to remember here is that from 1.4 to 1.9 happens like that. It happens so quickly, to the point that if you're not ready for it, you're going to miss it. So Petter's job as pilot monitoring today is to make sure that I don't miss it, and if I do, he's gonna very much remind me. So and what I've done in our FMC, we've got the fixed page, and I've put in this waypoint, this Oscar Echo Sierra, and I've put a 1.4 mile, it rounds it down in here, but 1.4 miles and a 1.9 miles, and you can see that being reflected on our navigation display. So 1.4 miles, you can see, is pretty much right bang at the end of the runway. That's how quickly that first little turn comes upon us. And then we're only going to fly out to this point before we make a left turn, and we're going to route all the way around with a maximum speed of 157 knots. And the challenge there, Petter, isn't there? Because the flight director is going to command up to V2 plus 20 knots. Now,
correct, which is a problem.
Safety speed. And it could fly up to 20 knots on top of that, which would be 165. So we could be too quick. So how do we overcome that? Where would you be looking? Would we follow our flight directors?
Well, potentially not. It depends on when the engine failure happens. So if the engine failure happens below V2, then we could potentially follow it. But most of the time, that would happen possibly just after we've rotated. And then we can't use the flight director, at least not fully. So you have to pitch above it, basically just pitch for the speed that you need. So in this case, it's going to be a little bit... maybe it's important here to explain why the speed is so important. It has to do with turn radius, and I've seen in the chat we've got a lot of questions about, well, why would you turn right when there's clearly a mountain there, and that's very perspective. Like it's a very good question, and that also has to do with the turning radius. So we can only turn with 15 degrees of bank in this case because of the engine failure, and because of that, we need a little bit of right turn before we make the left turn, because as you can see on the outside of that turn, you have not just one but several little mountains, and we don't want to hit any of them.
No. So this is actually this one here that you can see that I'm pointing to here. This is the one that actually kind of would cause us a problem. And when we're flying this in a real sim, and we're training crews on it, if we want to demonstrate, if we demonstrate it and fly too fast, you'll actually start getting terrain warnings off that mountain. We get too close to it. So to give us a little bit of space, we counterintuitively turn towards the terrain, because there's enough space to do that, and then that just opens up the arc and just gives us a bit more maneuver margin. But it's a very good question and very observant. But as you can see, we're only flying it for a very, very short period of time. So we're literally coming out here, and then we're going to make our left turn, max 157 knots, 15-degree angular bank, and we're going to set that on our mode control panel. So each little notch here is 10 degrees. So I will change that. So that's 10 to 15 degrees. And that will enable me to follow my roll flight director that will be on here. And once I'm going to try and get an autopilot in. So one thing to point out here is that I'm going to be flying this, actually flying it single pilot, because I've got to not only fly the airplane. What could go wrong? I've not only got to fly the airplane, put the rudder in, I've also got to be adjusting angles of bank and adjusting headings, which normally if we're in a two-pilot, Petter would do. I would call for it and Petter would do it, but he can't control my mouse at the moment. So I'm going to be doing it. So we'll see how that kind of pans out because I need like three hands here. But I have every faith. I'm sure we'll make it work. But yeah, once I've got that turn going, we'll try and get an autopilot in, and then we'll start diagnosing the fault. So I will state malfunction. Petter's going to walk through, diagnose that fault to make sure we've got the right one. And then we're going to run through any memory items that we might have. And then we're going to route inbound to a beacon, an NDB called Sierra India, which is going to be just behind the runway. And once we're inbound to that, that's when we can start what we call bugging up. So we move our speed bug using our speed knob here to the up, and I'll show you that. And that will enable us to pitch down slightly and allow the aircraft to accelerate so we can start retracting flaps, reducing drag. And now we're pointing away from terrain. And now after the Sierra India, we're then going to basically backtrack the approach. We're going to make a right turn and we're going to fly out to the Sierra Bravo Golf, which is a VOR in just north of Salzburg, where we would route towards. And we're going to climb to 6,000 feet. So that's kind of what we're going to try and do. In reality, would you want to come back in here on one engine, Petter?
No, absolutely not. For the single reason that if I'd have to go around again single engine, I would have the same kind of mountains to worry about. So no, I would not go in here single engine if I had a choice.
No.
Now I should be mentioning here as well, because I see a lot of people are mentioning that in the chat. Yes, we are running a little bit later today because we want to kind of spread these lives out to different audiences. So we thought, North America, let's cater for them. We're probably going to do an Australian one coming forward. That's going to be in the morning. So yeah, we're going to be changing around the times a little bit.
Yeah.
But this is like what I would like you guys to think about here is how complex this maneuver actually is when we fly it, and then picture that with a cockpit full of smoke, with your masks on, or even worse, if you don't have your mask on and you're breathing in that smoke, together with the natural stress that would come from dealing with an engine failure, the asymmetric thrust of it, all of that.
Yeah. So just you spoke about it in the video, Petter, but just to kind of highlight where that is. So if we're strapped in the jet here, we're kind of flying it. The actual mask, they're quick Don oxygen masks. So we would reach down and we would kind of pull that out, and then by squeezing the little red bits there, the actual head strap inflates so that it's easy to place over your head. And when you let go, it cuts off the air supply, and the elastic straps then kind of contract around your head. So you can do it one-handed. But when you're flying single engine, the surprise and startle factor, the human factor element of this, it obviously just adds another element of difficulty here. Sure. But not to say it's impossible. But right, what do you reckon, Petter? Anything else we need to speak about here before we start thinking about lining up on this runway?
No, I think people want to see us fly.
Let's go flying then. Cool. So what we'll do is, now we're ready to go. Shall we do the before takeoff checklist? We'll do the flow first of all. So we'll go below the line.
Below the line. Right. So this takes into account that we've just been cleared to enter a lineup on the runway. So when we have done that, we're going to do the below the line checklist, which is MCP.
Okay. So A is set.
The transponder
is TARA.
Strobe lights.
And we will put those on.
And holding on landing lights.
Holding on the landing lights. So, and again, in the pro course, you get access to all the checklists and flows. So you'll have all of these as ebooks that you could download. Right. So let's do that. So we'll get the clearance. So Butter 01, you're clear to line up and wait. Runway 15.
Clear to line up and wait. Runway 15, Butter 001.
Okay. So confirm read back, Petter.
Yep, we're clear to line up and wait. Runway 15.
Okay. So we are clear on the left.
And we are clear on the right side, sir.
Okay, let's go. We've done the checks below the line. We've got a bit of thrust. Now the max, the residual thrust on the max is actually pretty high. So generally we don't actually need much thrust to get moving. I've been at over 70 tons taxiing, and just idle thrust, it just quite happily moves. It's something to be careful of for sure.
Yeah, and it's another peculiarity with the Leap 1 Bravo engines.
Yeah. Check. So that's the RSAT. That's the runway situation awareness tool that tells us that we're approaching runway 15. So we're not going to get on the wrong runway here, which is always good. So I'm just going to line this up. No, we don't want to stop. Let's get that lined up.
You're still clear on the right side.
Thank you. Doesn't like lining up here. We just get it lined up. It's going to use a bit of asymmetric thrust as well to help get it around the bend. Okay, so while we're here lining up on the runway, let's have a little look at some of the terrain. Checked. Okay, so here we are. This is what we see. It's a beautiful part of the world, and this is what we see when we're lined up on the runway. But obviously, this terrain dead ahead here is what we would not potentially be able to outclimb if we climb straight ahead with an engine failure. So we're going to climb straight ahead and just go out towards the right just for a little bit before opening up that arc, before coming all the way around inside of this mountain here and coming back towards basically just to the north of Salzburg.
Yeah.
Now, yes, Peter.
No, I was just going to say that I have actually on Mentor Pilot, one of my really old videos, I did a circling maneuver into Salzburg, which I on purpose screwed up, so that I had to do a terrain escape maneuver over that hill on the right-hand side.
Nice.
So there is, like, if you want to see me in a real simulator doing this terrain escape maneuver with 2 engines, I should say, it is there.
Nice. Hopefully not that. Talking about terrain, actually, for those of you that want to try and emulate this in their own sim, I'm using the iFly sim at the moment. And this is not specific to iFly. I think this is a Microsoft issue. But I would go to your terrain inhibit switch and turn that off. So it says terrain inhibit. Something we would never do in real life. But if you don't do it, it will shout terrain at you all the time, which is not what we want.
No, this would probably be one of the last places on Earth that I would turn that off.
No, exactly. But yeah, if you want to do it here, do it. Now, the other thing I will say, just from a practical perspective, there is a facility to program failures into the sim, but they're not. I can't get them to work. We can't get them to work. So what I'm going to do is just going to make sure we shut down the engine to simulate the engine failure. How it happens is irrelevant. We're actually looking at, as long as the engine does fail, that's what we're looking at today. Okay.
Crabon is about to explode unless we take off soon. So let's talk about something unrelated for a little bit longer. All right, let's go then.
Okay, so Butter 01, you are clear takeoff runway 15. Surface wind is 150 degrees, 5 knots.
Clear for takeoff runway 15, Butter 001.
Okay, and we'll complete the checks.
Landing lights.
They are on. All right, so you ready?
No, so before takeoff checklist complete, and I'm ready.
All right, let's go. So hit the stopwatch. What could possibly go wrong? So here we go. I'm going to set 40% thrust to start with. Just going to bring that back a little bit.
And stabilized.
All right. So, and set takeoff thrust.
Perfect. Okay, so takeoff thrust set, indications normal.
Good. So I'm just checking the instruments now. I'm looking left and right to make sure the airspeed's accelerating properly. Engines are good, keeping the center line.
80 knots.
Checked.
Rotate.
Okay, so we're climbing along. Suddenly, flock of birds simulates this.
Okay. So we've got master caution ELEC, and we've got an engine failure.
Good. So I'm now looking to kind of keep the center line, and I'm looking to that first ring, which we're just coming up to now on my nav to space. So I'm going to make a gentle right turn onto a track of 168 until it says 1.9 miles. So 1.8 and 1.9. Round we go.
Thank you. Bank 15 degrees.
Now you can see my speed is a little bit quick now. So I'm going to pitch up. And I'm going to squeeze a bit more rudder.
Cool. I would be cancelling that master caution, but I can't from here, unfortunately.
Yep, there we go.
Thank you. And then keep
turning
around 15 degrees of bank and 150. That's good on the speed. A little bit low
so I'm just going to trim it. So the nose just needs a bit of nose trim on there. I think the rudder feels pretty good. So what I'm going to do is try and get an autopilot in here now. Let's see how that works. I'm just going to get that turn coming all the way around. This is where I need 3 hands at 15 degrees of bank.
Yeah. So here, obviously, we're turning away from the main terrain, but we still have a lot of terrain on our left-hand side here. So it's important to keep the turn going and to keep those 15 degrees of bank and the speed. If the speed goes too high, the turning radius will be too wide and will be too close to the terrain.
Yeah. So now I've got everything kind of under control here at the minute. So the speed's coming back up. We've got 15 degrees of bank. I've got the rudder in. My workload now is starting to reduce a little bit. So that's now where I would say to Petter, okay, let's state malfunction.
Okay, so we've got very low N1, we've got very low EGT, we've got a cross bleed indication and almost no N2, no fuel flow. There's no vibrations, but of course, in this case, we are smelling some smoke and we're also feeling some vibrations here that we can't really simulate. And then I will go down to the fire panel and I will have a look to see if it doesn't seem like any of the fire handles is illuminated and there's no overheat warning either. So with the vibrations and the smoke, I would say that we have an engine severe damage on engine number 2.
I would agree. So at that point now, I would call engine fire severe damage or separation memory items.
Engine fire severe damage or separation memory items. So auto throttle, if engaged, disengage.
Okay, so that's going to disengaged.
Disengage, thank you. Thrust lever on engine number 2, confirm, close.
Good. So I'll put my ham on it. Petter will make sure that I've got the right one. And I would say confirm and then close.
Good. And that's super important to confirm. Otherwise, you might be taking off the wrong engine here. You don't want that. So the next is engine start lever. Engine number 2, confirm, cut off.
So confirm, and that's cut off.
Cut off. Engine fire warning switch. Engine number 2, confirm, pull.
So we would override and we would pull that. It doesn't come up in this, but we would pull that up, and that isolates your hydraulics, your pneumatics, and everything else. So the engine is then secure. So that's pulled.
And since there's no fire indicated, that's the end of the memory items.
Good. So what I'll do, Petter, if I could have Sierra India on top, please, now.
Okay, so we got Sierra India on top on the legs page here. We check the navigation display. Does it look okay?
Yeah, execute, please.
Execute. LNAV available.
All right, so I'm going to press LNAV, make sure I have LNAV up here. And now we're inbound. Let's just get Sierra Bravo Golf after that, because that's going to happen pretty quickly.
Good. So we'll take the top one. That's the closest VOR. So does that make sense? You happy?
Yeah, execute, please.
Execute. That's LNAV available.
Okay, so now we're inbound. We're above our MFRA of 3110, which is our minimum flap retraction altitude. Let's now accelerate. So I'll call bug up. And you can see
that means that I will be moving the speed up to the up bug. That's what says up on the speed tape, which is on the left side. And that means that is our safe, clean speed. So this will cause the aircraft to lower the nose and start accelerating so that we can retract the flaps.
Good. And once we're above this white bug, which is our V2 plus 15 bug, and we're accelerating, we can retract to the next flap, which in this case is 1. So I'll call flap 1, please.
Speed checks, flaps 1.
Now, we've reached 5 minutes, Petter. So we've got a limit of takeoff thrust of 5 minutes, at which point we need to go to our maximum continuous thrust. So I'm just going to call for flaps up first of all.
Okay, so it's above the it's above the 1 bug. So speed checks, flaps up.
Okay, and if you could just set max, using reserve fuel, disregard. So if we go to max continuous, so we press the N1 limit. And what you're going to see here, you can see that this is where it's commanded at the moment. If I change it to continuous, it brings it back up. So we've now set that.
The little green carrot is going up to whatever we've set there. Max continuous is as the name suggests, the thrust that we can keep this engine on basically as long as we have fuel. So we will just continue and we'll set that. And interesting enough, I don't know if you see it here, but you see that the flaps are still retracting. It's taking a long time. And the reason for that is because it's the number 2 engine that's failed. And that means that the hydraulic V system that is driving the flaps, it's now only got the electric pump driving the flaps, which is much, much slower. So that's why it's taking so much time.
Yeah. So and exactly right. So now that's flaps are up there.
That's flaps up, no light.
Good. And what you can see here is I've reduced the thrust now manually to about 70% N1, and you can see the aircraft is struggling to keep wings level here. And that's because I need to adjust my rudder. So I'm going to take some left rudder off now. And what we're aiming for in the primary, they call it the primary, but the Boeing's primary rudder trim technique, is we're looking for our ailerons to be neutral. And you can see here that neutral is at 0. And we've got 2 units. So the aircraft, to keep the wings level, the aircraft is having to put aileron in because there's too much rudder at the moment. So once we've come back onto our heading, And in fact, I wouldn't. We said we're not going to go off to Salzburg. We'd actually end up going off to, say, Munich, somewhere out there. So I'm going to go for a heading select out there, which was our plan if we lost an engine. And now we're here at 6,000 feet. The speed's under control. We've secured our engine. We're above. You can see now we're pointing away from the terrain. It's nice and flat out here. We've managed to kind of get airborne, get ourselves safely away from the terrain, and now get pointing to a suitable alternate. The weather out here is beautiful this evening. We're going to start turning towards Munich, which we would decide actually is a very sensible place to go. It's got two very, very long runways and is a nice place to go if you do have any engine problems. And we can go back to 25 degrees of bank.
And I got an excellent question here on the chat, which was that, well, when are you guys going to call Mayday? Is that ever going to happen? And this is a great example, actually, where we aviate, navigate, communicate. You do that in that order. So what we have to do in the beginning is just fly the aircraft, do the emergency checklist, secure the aircraft. Now, once we are, sure that we are navigating correctly, and now we actually have a plan, this is also where we would come in and give a Mayday call.
Yeah, because obviously we've done a lot of talking around this, and that would have been a Mayday call in there. But I think and as you call a Mayday, you generally can get drawn into a conversation. They'll want to know what your plans are, and so you've got to be in a position where you're ready to do this without compromising what you're going to be flying, or navigating. So now here we are, 6,000 feet, speed's under control. The rudder now is looking, you can see the ailerons here are giving us a nice neutral aileron, so we're not having to put any aileron in here to keep the wings level. The rudder's in trim, and we're now safely moving away. This is where we would now call for a checklist, and we would start then going through the remainder of that checklist. But you can see, if I just pause us here, you can see that it's busy. We're working hard, and it's not easy. And then you throw in smoke coming in through the vents, you may be starting to cough, eyes watering, trying to reach down to get that mask. It gets, it really does get challenging.
Oh yeah, you made it look easy now, but this is probably one of the more challenging things that we do, because only dealing with an engine failure in itself just after takeoff is hard, right? This is what we test pilots on when we have the recurrent checks to make sure that they can actually handle that. So that's just climbing straight ahead, following a relatively simple emergency turn. But if you add on these kind of procedures that you also have to do slightly outside of the flight director, and then you add on using masks or with a smoke-filled cockpit, I don't know. What do you think? What would happen? Like how many crews would actually, like, on the first try, without being prepared for that, actually get do a good job with it?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And I think as we said at the beginning, you're kind of looping back around to that. It's all in the prep and the mindset. I think if you're ready for it and you go, this is going to happen on this departure, and you press toga with that mindset, then there's a fighting chance it's going to work well. But if you're not in that mindset, which a professional pilot wouldn't, would hopefully be in that mindset. But if it's not, it's just you can imagine how it could fall to bits very, very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's like these are the kind of things that I love talking about, by the way. This kind of making this kind of instruction. I see we're getting a whole load of really, really good questions in the chat as well. I would love to have the time to go through all of these questions, but I can guarantee you that most of the questions that you are asking is actually answered in that virtual 737 course that we have done. This is, I highly recommend you, if you're interested in any way, shape, or form about learning more on how to fly your home simulator professionally, or even if you're just interested in learning more about how we do normal procedures, and to some extent also non-normal procedures, this is what you definitely should check out. I don't know, I would like to add a little bit about what happened after the video that I did about the LRD, because there was a lot of ruckus happening out in the industry after this. A lot of people, a lot of pilots had read the bulletin that Boeing produced, but had not actually understood how bad this could be. So I've gotten a lot of feedback over LinkedIn and all over the place, where people have been, reaching out and said, this is terrible, what can we do about it? But there hasn't been any official from neither the FEA nor EASA reaching out to talk more about this. Unfortunately, I was hoping that was going to happen, but I basically had two aims with making that video. One was to get the FEA to start moving and following their own investigators' recommendations, but also to inform my colleagues out there that this system exists and it can behave in this particular way. So at least one out of those two did happen, which I'm super, super happy about.
Yeah, I can say from firsthand experience that seeing crews, their awareness of it since the video's gone out generally has massively improved. So that's a real plus, real plus. But it's an interesting topic. It is fascinating, and it's amazing how these things can really kind of sneak into the operation and change an operation. Once, I would imagine I could foresee where some supplementary procedures are going to be put into place to try and protect this, you would hope. But as long as crews are aware of it, as long as we're aware of the threat and how to manage it, then we can still fly safely away. But it's part of being a professional pilot to deal with these challenges. It's about having the resilience to do so, but having that knowledge beforehand makes all the difference.
You need to. Otherwise you are resilience. Yes, sure, it helps. But if you're not aware of a system like this or what's causing it, you're going to have the chances of your resilience being enough is going to reduce dramatically. So it's super important that everyone understands about it. But I got another really good question here in the chat, which saying this virtual 737 course, is it any good if you're new to flight simming? Should you be? Is this really, really advanced? And the answer to that is no. This is how we teach. The way that you see us now, we talk pretty quick, but we do tend to really go into explain each system and why we're moving each button, right?
Yeah.
So we go through that in excruciating detail. And of course, with this course, you'll always have the chance to go back and review each step. So you will be, if you go through it, you will be able, the learning curve that you will go through if you go through this course and actually listen to it is incredible. You'll go from not understanding why you can't get your 737 working until really understanding why you're doing what in the shape of a few weeks. When you do this, it's going to change the way that you use your simulator for sure.
100%. And some of we get so much positive feedback from people that have done this. And I think the common thread here is it kind of unlocks people's potential here. I remember when I started flight sim, you end up getting frustrated because you're not quite sure why something's working, or one day it does. And, no matter how much software or hardware you make it to make your experience as real and as fun as possible, unless you know how to use it properly, it doesn't work. And the feedback that we've got is just saying it unlocked me. I wish I'd done it 10 years ago. That's I think the real, what we aim to do, wasn't it? It was to bring real training and the real insights to flight sim.
Yeah,
and it's been amazing to see the transformation.
Yeah, and we're going to be doing more of these things. By the way, I miss live streaming. I love doing this, and I love hanging out with you as well, Ben, because obviously me and Ben have exactly the same background. We were both 737 type rating instructors and type rating examiners, even though I at the moment are on a break. But Ben, you're still working with crews to this day.
Very much so. Yeah.
So I mean, doing live streams like this together with you and having someone to kind of, bowl the questions against and talk with is just fantastic, and it's going to be more of that. And we are in the midst of planning for a podcast. So guys, if you like these kind of talk, we're going to be talking about all sorts of things, about what's happening to us personally and all the things, but it's going to be around the subject of decision making from a pilot's point of view. So I think that if you like this, what we did today, you're going to love what we're about to release as well. And of course, I hope that you're checking out both of the channels. I mean, Ben is one of our newest presenters on Mentor Now, and he's learning a ton, aren't you?
It's a steep learning curve. I feel like being a cadet again during the type rating, so it's great to try something new. But Petter's, he's a hard taskmaster. He has the whip out, and it's tough.
I promise you that we're gonna get ourselves. I'm gonna rent a simulator, and then you can whip me instead, because it's been a year and a half now since I was in the cockpit. So I need to get back. I'm actually renewing my type rating soon. So
nice.
I'm gonna need some tutoring before I do that.
Revenge will be sweet, Mr. Hornfelt.
And on that bombshell, I don't know. Do you want to add something? I think that we've kind of covered what we wanted to cover today, right?
No, that was fun. That was cool. I'm glad we're pointing in the right way and we're not in a mountain somewhere. So I think that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for being here. It was awesome to see you all. Yeah.
I couldn't say it better myself. Guys, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope it's answered a few of your questions about how we deal with these things. We can go into even more details if you guys want. And by the way, let us know in the comments if there's something that you would like us to cover, right?
Absolutely.
Is it something technical or non-technical or whatever? Anything that you want us to do, we listen to you. And this is also why I love doing live streaming, because you get to hang out with the community in a completely different way.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I don't have anything more to add. So I think we just say good night, right? Because man, my kids are going to school in like 6 hours. So.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, thank you everyone for being here. I hope you enjoyed it. We loved it. More to come, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, Peter. Bye.